You're now tuned into Down to Hot Radio. I'm your host, Walil Archer. On Down to Hot Radio, I'm a special guest, Barry Spaulding. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing awesome this Sunday morning. So let's jump right into your book. Let the listeners know the name of your book.
The name of the book is Who's to Blame? Um, it's a little bit of a flight of fantasy into one man's relationship with the Almighty and um, how it's changed him.
Now, how did you come up with the title, Who's to Blame?
It kind of jumped out as I was writing the story because my prime character George, um, he grew up with a very loving family, but he had some personal tragedies early on that um, shook his faith, and he allowed himself to wallow in, I don't know, self-pity, if you want to call it that. And he started blaming God for everything that goes wrong in his life. And eventually, God gets tired of hearing it, so he brings George up to heaven to discuss it with him. And the story revolves around George's um, interaction with God and Satan.
How many main characters do you have?
Well, there are four. There's George, there's God, there's Satan, and then there's George's guardian angel, Angela.
Okay. And then tell us about the other three characters.
Well, of course, God is the all-knowing, all-seeing. He he knows exactly what's going on, but in his own way, he wants George to discover his own answers. So that's what he does, is he brings George up to heaven, and he lets George see what life is like, what life is supposed to be, and he's more of a mentor type. Um, as I say, he already knows what's going to happen. So, he's letting George discover his own way.
And your other two characters?
Well, um, Satan is very slick. He's very intelligent. He knows his function very well. Um, and in a way, he supplements God's character because you can't have good without evil, you can't have dark without light, things like that. So Satan is that check and balance. Um, he's very, his character is presented as a likable, though somewhat intimidating individual. Um, and he's heard a lot about George. He knows about George's faith, um, and he wants to show George the error of his thinking in his own way.
And your last character?
Angela, she's just she again, she's George's guardian angel, but she's also the love he's never had. Um, George is, he's an adult. He's been out in the world for a while, but he has no close family. He lost his brother early on. His parents are gone, so he's essentially alone. But Angela is the love interest that George has not yet discovered, and um, eventually, he crosses that threshold as well. So she becomes important to him as we go through the story.
Okay. Now, what inspired you to write the story?
It's for a long time I've thought about things like this. What would heaven and hell be like? Um, I read a book years ago called Expecting Someone Taller. Um, and it essentially it dealt with um, Norse mythology, and they illustrated the gods as um, normal type people, but every morning they get up and Odin has his morning coffee with the staff, and they go about their business as gods normally do. And it was a kind of an interesting way the author wrote it because he put it in contemporary terms that most people could understand because, let's face it. I mean, we all have our own impression of what heaven and hell looks like. Um, but early on in the story, God tells George that um, we all make our own heaven and hell. To each person, it's different. So what I did was I kind of thought about it in the year 2025, what might heaven look like? What might hell look like? So that's where the story came from.
Now, what would you say you learned from writing the book?
Um, I think I learned that there's more to me than just um, what I'm putting on the paper. What I'm doing is in all of my books, I'm trying to tell not just an entertaining story, but a little bit of a philosophical story. In this case here, it's about George's faith, good, bad, or indifferent, and how he moves on in the world. Um, my science fiction books want the first one is a complete flight of fantasy. It's a long running work. Took me over 15 years to write. Um, but I wanted to make a lot of elements all in one. Um, there's the great space battles, there's intrigue, um, there's love, there's revenge. Um, there's a flawed hero character who is searching not only for the revenge he seeks, but for a new life. Um, and that's what I don't want to just write a Star Wars. I want to write stories that engage the reader, um, not just their interest in the story, but to get them to come away with a little bit of a new perspective, whether it's on life or love or duty, honor, whatever.
Okay. Now, did you face any challenges when writing this book?
Not really. Um, it was Uh, it was just a story that came to me, and unfortunately, that's the way my brain works sometimes, is I'll get an idea and it just won't go away, so I have to write it down. Um, and this one kind of told itself. Um, it did not take that long to write. It took less than a year from first concept to paperback. So I definitely, I enjoyed writing it. And this is probably of the three books, I think this is the one I'm most proud of because of the way I built the story. And I'm hoping anyone who reads it will understand that.
Okay. Now, you mentioned stories. Is it broken down into stories or in the book, is it in chapters?
No, it's just one continuous thing. It's not a long book. It's a short story that we added a lot of illustrations to. Um, I guess you could even call it part graphic novel. But um, it's one continuous thing. There's a little bit of a flashback where we get to see what George went through as a kid, as a young adult, and then to the point where God brings him to heaven. And then while he's in heaven and hell, um, the elements of his life are brought forward to him, and he sees where, you know, he let himself uh, go astray, if you want to call it.
And what do you want the readers to take away from reading the story?
Just to be mindful. You know, those of faith, hopefully it will give you a new lease on, perseverance and the ability to see the good in life. Um, for others, just to be entertained and hopefully, let you see one aspect of one person's belief.
While writing the book, did you experience writer's block?
A couple of times, not with this story, not much.
And how did you move past it once you did experience writer's block?
Um, I'm fully retired from federal law enforcement, so I have a lot of little things I'm doing. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I love camping, hiking, exploring the outdoors, things like that. Um, but I'm also a musicaholic. So sometimes I'll just sit and put on some music in the headphones and let my brain vegetate.
Now, what was the most memorable moment about writing this story?
George's reaction when he met Satan.
Explain.
Um, yeah, George, at first, George doesn't really believe he's in heaven. The first person he meets is Angela, and when she tells him she's his guardian angel, he's very skeptical. When they meet God in his office, George is like, it's one of those things. Yeah, right. This is heaven. You're God. Yeah, I get it. That type of thing. Um, and then God has to do his morning staff meeting with the rest of, his subordinates. So he and George walk down the hallway, um, and later on, there's this individual who George immediately focuses on, and God turns to him and says, "Oh, I'd like you to meet Satan," in a very matter of fact way. And I'm just writing that part and envisioning that thing. Here's George who's trying to grasp the whole thing. He's got God, he's got a bunch of angels around him, and in a very matter of fact way, God says, "Oh, by the way, here's Satan, say hi." That type of thing. So, and he is totally shocked by Satan's appearance, his demeanor, his whole thing is this ain't what I expected. Um, so most definitely, I think his interaction when he first meets Satan, it was the fun part for me.
And where can people purchase your book at online?
All of my books are available on Amazon very, very easily. Um, you look up BJ Spaulding, you can look up the titles. The first one is Who's to Blame? The second one is Fight for Survival. And if you're into science fiction, full-blown novels, there's Dark Star. Um, so most definitely, you can find it there electronically or as a paperback. Um, and my author website is https / authorbarryspalding.com. You can interact there. There's also, a link to purchase the books there, and there are some interviews and uh, reviews there for people that want to see a little bit about it. Um, just to let people know a little bit about myself and things like that. And most definitely follow along because there are more books coming.
Nice. And as we close out, any final thoughts or closing remarks?
No, just you know what? I started writing when I was 16. I got hooked on Conan the Barbarian and Lord of the Rings and things like that. I played Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. Then I then I graduated high school. I joined the army. I went away. I got married, raised a family. I kept writing, but I never published those stories. I put them aside. Um, Never give up on your dream. I retired from federal law enforcement. I'm a retired Army sergeant. Um, I just got divorced within the last year. I'm living alone, but I'm also publishing the books that I've wanted to publish for the longest time. If you have a dream, don't give up on it. Make it come true. Um, Live your best dream.
Dreams, dreams, dreams. Never give up on your dreams. I like that.
Exactly.
I like that. Well, that's our time today on Down to Hot Radio. Barry, I'd like to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
So I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to Downtown Hot Radio. And this is Walil Archer. I'll see you guys next time on Downtown Hot Radio. Peace and blessings.